All right, happy Friday, good morning, or almost afternoon, depending on where you are. We are here today for our June Driving Success webinar. I can't believe that we are wrapping up June already next week. Feels like it just flew by, but that means that we are halfway through the year. So now is a good time to really take a step back, do a mid-year safety and compliance review, and just make sure that the rest of 2025 and moving on is going to be as successful as possible. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to cover 5 different areas that you should be looking at during this time and hone in on some specific gaps, what's causing them, and how to fix them in the future and currently. We are also going to talk about some changes that are coming on June 23rd, the medical card changes for commercial drivers. We'll be going over some of those changes and some ways to make sure that it's a smooth transition. Before we get started, let me go ahead and just do my quick little housekeeping. We will be doing a Q&A, as always, at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question that comes up during the presentation, feel free to throw it into the Q&A at the top of your screen. I also will be recording this webinar, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. You will get a copy of this sent to you via email, and it'll also be available on our LinkedIn, our website, and our YouTube. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into our webinar. So the top 5 areas we're going to talk about today specifically are driver qualification files, drug and alcohol testing, vehicle maintenance, behavioral monitoring, and document readiness. So with that, our first category is our driver qualification files. So there's a lot that encompasses driver qualification files, right? But we want to hone in on some specifics to, kind of narrow down things that we see pretty often when dealing with driver qualification files that are some gaps. So things like expired licenses, medical cards, and endorsements tend to sometimes slip through the cracks depending on how your protocol are. If you're relying on your driver, if you're using like an Excel spreadsheet, sometimes they just go unnoticed that they're expired. So I want to make sure that whatever system you're utilizing to make sure that you're going in and that there are no expired drivers on the road, essentially. The next thing is incomplete applications or missing road test documents. So if you do conduct road tests, or if you're in California and have a proficiency test, making sure that those are being done properly, as well as incomplete applications. If you're utilizing a paper application, sometimes there may be a mishap of incomplete information or misinformation. So those are the specific things that we tend to see are really gaps within the driver qualification files. So some of these root causes are manual reminders, right? We talked a little bit about, using an Excel spreadsheet or Outlook reminders. That can get really tedious with having to check up on manually. So you want to see if there's a way to automate those reminders for you so you don't have to remember to reset your calendar. Also, just disconnected processes between departments. When you have a lot of hands in the pot, sometimes there can be a miscommunication. So it's really nice to have a centralized database that all departments that are involved with onboarding drivers or dealing with driver qualification files have, good visibility on those files. So how are we going to fix that, right? Again, automate the renewal reminders. See if there's a way that you can automate your reminders. Good tools are like our DQMconnect, which is our driver file management software, has automated renewals for licenses and endorsements. And then additionally, you can set reminders as well. It's also having a centralized platform. So again, DQM or some type of centralized software will really help keep all the eyes that need to be on an individual there and present, and you don't have to send emails or check in accordingly. You can just log in and see what's missing. So the next section is drug and alcohol testing, right? So if your drivers are subject to randoms, you want to make sure that they're meeting the random testing rate. So just make sure that by the end of this year, you're going to meet the requirement percentage for your DOT drivers. The other thing you want to make sure is that any refusals to test or like return to duties that are currently either in process or if you think that they're done, just double check that those procedures were clearly documented or they're completed so that that driver who may potentially be on the road again actually has a return to duty sign off. So some of those root causes for lack of drug and alcohol testing compliance could be just a simple disconnect between your TPA or your medical professional. So sometimes some people think that their consortium is handling their randoms for them, and then they get down halfway through the year and they find out that the consortium is not handling the randoms for them, or they just don't have the proper documentation to show in terms of an audit. So you want to make sure that you have an open communication with your consortium. And then also, again, visibility across departments. Depending on how your operations are ran, there might be a lot of hands in the pot, right? So you want to just make sure that you have a way that everybody who needs to know what's going on with drug and alcohol testing, from onboarding to randoms to reasonable suspicion, making sure that there's that visibility there. So how do you fix it, right? Build a workflow for each test type. Usually integrations really help with this. So if you have a platform that you're utilizing that has an integration with your consortium, that's always really helpful. Having that centralized platform. So again, you're not having to log into multiple different platforms or having people manage multiple different platforms. That's also very helpful. And then just make sure that you define your relationship with your consortium or your third-party administrator. Make sure that you understand that who is handling the random generation, who is responsible for reaching out, who is managing your driver roster, right? Just ensure that you've had that conversation with your consortium and that it is definitive of what the operation is going to be. We've run into that before where they think their consortium is handling their randoms and it turns out that they're not. So just make sure that you have that conversation with your consortium. So next thing is vehicle maintenance and DVIRs. So what to look for when you're kind of going through this. So maintenance logs, make sure that your maintenance logs are up to date or being recorded. Things like tires and brake inspections and any recent out of service events are all being recorded and, reviewed essentially. Also make sure that your DVIRs are actually being completed and they're not just signing off, and ensure that the drivers are doing what they need to do before they get on the road. The other thing is, are maintenance requests being reviewed and addressed? So if a driver submits something, it needs to be looked at, it needs to be reviewed and possibly addressed if it is a major safety violation. So some of the root causes are just poor daily inspection processes. If you're using paper or it's a really hard process for your driver, they're more likely to skip it or to not do it because it takes a lot of time. It takes time out of their driving time, and they only get so many hours in a day, right, to be hours of service compliant. So making sure that inspection process is easy for them to do will help make them be more thorough. Also, just a lack of communication between maintenance team and the driver. So the driver has an issue, they do their DVIR, and then what happens with that DVIR or what happens with that maintenance request? If it's a really manual process and it has to go through a lot of different channels, odds are that the ball might get dropped. The maintenance team doesn't actually see that request, and then it never gets fixed. So how to fix that? Schedule regular internal audits for your maintenance docs, especially if you have a lot of different individuals who are involved in this process. Just make sure that there's someone kind of overseeing it overall and ensuring that those documents are being looked at to ensure that something that was reported actually gets fixed. Also, things like maintenance software, automation, and like a communication portal is always really helpful. So if you can kind of automate that system with having that visibility from driver to who needs to actually deal with the problem, cutting out that middleman is kind of, really helpful. All right, behavioral safety monitoring. So what to look for. So analyze your recent MVRs, CSA violations, gas cam footage, customer complaints even. And you want to revisit training history. All of these things can encompass to a driver potentially having a very unsafe driving history and can lead to some safety violations on the road. So root causes are poor training follow-up. You send out the training and then you just think that they do it, they complete it, or they run through it and they don't really absorb that training. Just making sure that you're following up with your drivers or your admin, that the drivers are actually completing this. Lack of safety and risk analytics. So it's really hard to be able to make decisions when you don't have a good way of tracking behavior or safety risks. So being able to have like a centralized database or something that automatically kind of gives you stats on where you're at with specific drivers or like overall your fleet will be really helpful to be able to monitor behavioral safety. And then ignoring small offenses. So little things here and there, most of the time are probably not a big deal, but if those things continue to happen and they get ignored, eventually there might be an escalation that can lead to an offense, like harsh braking. Sometimes some people see that as something that is not a big deal, but why are they harsh braking so often? Are they going over the speed limit? Are they not paying attention? There might be there might be a deeper root cause of why they're always having harsh braking, events. So how to fix that? Utilize analytics to gauge safety and risk trends. Again, having a database or having a way to actually track accidents, citations, customer complaints, and being able to spit out some analytics for you to see how your team is actually doing is really, really helpful. And then implement preventative training programs. So we really want to encourage preventative training, preventative measures, so we don't get to the point of somebody who is going to cause a large safety violation or safety hazard. So having preventative training programs in place instead of reactive training programs in place tend to have a better outcome. So document readiness, right? This is a big one, especially with audits. So could you pass a DOT audit if it happened tomorrow? Are you able to access your files? Are they complete? Are they centralized? Are they searchable? Are they up to date? This is a really, this kind of goes hand in hand with driver files and your vehicle hours of service. There's a lot of different things that go into document readiness, but just having those accessible. Are those accessible and easy for you to show to an auditor? So root causes is miscommunication between departments. One department houses driver files. One department houses maintenance records. One department houses, your onboarding stuff. Having that miscommunication, not a centralized database, can make it very difficult for someone who is under pressure of prepping for an audit very quickly. Poor understanding of regulations, right? In this industry, we have a change that's coming on Monday. If things change, things evolve, with the FMCSA always trying to put safety at the forefront. Things change all the time, and sometimes things don't get updated or individuals aren't aware of the change. There's also a lot of regulations that, depending on who reads it, how they interpret it, it kind of depends on the individual. So also multiple database housing, we talked about that, can cause some miscommunication between departments or an individual having to really work extra hard to get what they need. So how to fix it? centralized digital files, whether that's a software, whether that's, a cloud-based server that everyone has access to. How are you guys all making sure that everyone has exactly what they need when they need it? Also having a audit workflow. So if an auditor were to tell you, hey, I'm coming to look at your files, what is actually the protocol? Do you know? Is this your first audit? Do you have something in place that is step-by-step, a workflow that you can follow to ensure that something doesn't get missed? So best practices, right? Automate to prevent, not react. So we talked about this a lot. The automation that's there to prevent driver files or driver credentials being expired and them getting on the road and then they get pulled over, having that automation really helps. Proactive file auditing and risk scoring. So doing those audits internally every once in a while. We're halfway through the year. Now is a good time to do it. Maybe do it quarterly, and you can just do a couple to ensure that, overall your safety and compliance protocol is up to date. Again, with the risk scoring, so having something that gives you analytics up front so that you can make those good choices with that data. Make safety tracking continuous, not reactive. Again, I think you guys can see a theme here, trying to be preventative and not reactive towards a situation, trying to prevent something from blowing up before it does. Use your data to drive decisions. This is a big one. Again, if you just have a bunch of data that doesn't really do a whole lot for you, it's not really compiled in a way that you can look at it and make informed decisions. It's just a bunch of dead data at that point. So having a way that your data actually does something for you is great. And then build workflows, not just reminders. So reminders are always great. The automation is always great. But if you just have an email that's being sent to you and now you have to reach out to the driver, contact the driver, 5-6 times, is that really cutting down on any work? Is it really helping move things along quicker? So I know there's a lot of different things to look at. So I just want to throw up some quick wins, some things that you guys can do today, instead of taking this giant list that we talked about and going, I don't even know where to start. So automatic renewal alerts and workflows, that will help tremendously cutting down time of follow-up, having to reset reminders. So finding a way to automate the renewals and to have a nice workflow in place. Outline clear random testing procedures. Go back, check, make sure that your random testing is up to date, it's good to go, and that you're going to meet that requirement by the 50%. And just have that quick conversation with your consortium that it's being handled properly. And then assign tasks for DVIR follow-ups and maintenance requests. Go through your maintenance requests, see if there's anything that got missed, see if, something needs to get done today. That's a quick thing to kind of go through and assign right off the bat. That will clear up a lot of issues right now. So what tools are available? There's a lot out there. These are some of the ones that we prefer. DQM, Gateway, Whip Around is great for maintenance scheduling, to have that communication between the driver and the maintenance team. Geotab, Samba Safety, and Evolution. These are all really great partners to work with to kind of help with those workflows. Now, one thing I do also want to talk about, because it's coming around the corner, is medical card changes, right? I don't know if everyone's aware, but there are some changes coming to medical cards on Monday. And really, the goal is that it's going digital, essentially, is really in a short version, right? But some things that are really changing, and I want to preface this by saying it's changing for your regulated drivers who have a commercial driver's license. So if they don't have a commercial driver's license, but they are still regulated, so they operate 10,001 pounds vehicle, nothing's really changing for them. It's just the commercial driver's license holders. So medical card will no longer be a valid way to prove updated medical clearance. So a medical examiner, when the driver goes to get their med card renewed, the examiner will do what they need to do, and then the medical examiner will actually electronically submit to a national database 24 hours after the test. So because of that electronic submission, companies will have to run a new MVR to show the updated medical information. Also, because it's all electronic and it's being sent already by certified medical examiners through the FMCSA, that a carrier will no longer have to verify the medical examiner on the national registry. Again, this is not for those who are still regulated but don't hold a commercial driver's license, though everything is still the same protocol for medical cards. So couple things, this is going to change. This is a little bit of a transition, and with transitions, there are some hard things that come up, right? When there's a big change, the clearinghouse is a great example 4 years ago of how many growing pains there was with that, that we are going to give you a couple tips to help with smooth transition. So the driver should still request a medical card copy. So the medical examiner is not automatically going to give a paper copy of the medical card. The driver, however, still can request it. So we want to make sure that we're still talking to our drivers and saying, hey, just please request that medical card, that copy, because for whatever reason, if they miskey it when they're transferring the information, or something glitches, or they forget to enter it, stuff happens, right? They miskey their driver's license. You still have some type of proof to be able to kind of help fix it a little faster. Also, having an open communication with your medical provider. So make sure you have whoever is doing the medical card update, that you have their information and that you're on top of communications with them if you notice that something is not done. One thing also is to integrate your MVR provider with a driver file management software. So if you are utilizing some type of driver file management software, having that integration to order the MVR straight from your software will help with that workflow of, okay, I got a medical card in, now I have to run that MVR, or I got confirmation that the medical card was done, right? The renewal was completed. Now I need to run the MVR. Also, the drivers will no longer need to carry a medical card because, again, the paper copy is not being given, but we do recommend that drivers keep an MVR copy in the cab with them because, again, things happen. The officers are going to have visibility into the database, but technology, right? We just want to make sure that we're prepared as possible through these growing pains of transitions. Now, if you want some more information, there's some fact sheets and actually the list of states that are compliant and ready to go with this new transition. It's only about 16 of them. So not everyone is set up for this transition. You can see on this link here, you'll be able to, at the very bottom of the screen, it will tell you the states that are ready to roll with this new transition. And it's getting updated every day. So hopefully by Monday we get majority, but there are some states that are not ready to do this transition here. So if the state is not on that list, then proceed as you already have been. So you will still receive the paper medical card. You will still have to check and verify on the National Registry until that state is up and running with the new changes. All right. So that is, our mid-year safety and compliance check-in, and then also our changes with coming around the corner. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat now or the Q&A now, and I can go ahead and answer them. But if you have questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out to our team. Our contact information is up on the screen. You will be getting a recording of this webinar as well, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah, any questions? I know we covered a lot. I don't see any coming in. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this month for Driving Success. Next month, we're super excited. Great topic. We're going to talk about when automation is great and when AI should or shouldn't be involved in driver file management. So follow us on LinkedIn and stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thanks, everyone.